Hey guys and girls, Bored now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about The Midnight Club, episode 3. It is called The Wicked Heart. Full spoilers once again. And this is a Kevin-centric episode. He takes a bit more of the lead in this one. It's another solid episode. There's a couple of scenes I'm not too keen on. There's a couple of scenes of forced drama, like for example with Alonka and Kevin at this, because part of the episode is set over this day where you have parents or family members come in to see the different patients. It's one of those special days that only happens so often when they can visit them. I don't know how often it would happen, maybe once a month, but there is a little bit of drama there with Kevin and Alonka, because she comes over, he introduces her to his family, and there's a moment where she confuses his girlfriend for his sister, just assumes it's his sister, which you can see why she would, but personally watching the scene unfold, you can see it coming a mile off. In fact, before she came over, there is a moment where you see them holding hands like boyfriend and girlfriend, but obviously they're doing the thing where possibly Alonka has some feelings for Kevin, and it's been hinted at that it could be a two-way thing, but her reaction is, and she kind of is she backs away basically and says she's got to go, and it's just an awkward thing, and it makes it obvious, and there is some feelings there for Kevin. So I wasn't so hot on that scene. That was a little bit forced drama, and the other weak scene then I didn't think was too great was then Nunsky finds out that Tristan, who's the fellow patient who she'd been reading to, has died. She's passed, or he's passed. I think it's meant to be a girl. So she comes in and finds the body. So they're sort of mourning her later in the episode. And that's one thing I like, is that it sells how important when a patient goes, it is to the other members, the other patients, and to this group of patients especially. And so some of what they're talking about in the episode when they're remembering her is she sending signs from the grave, because that's one of their big oath. Then if one of them goes, then they all send signs from the grave, because they all, one way or the other, sort of believe in supernatural thing. And Anna is kind of Anna. When the religious one starts talking about it, Anna just throws it back in her face. But anyway, the scene I'm not so keen on is then you have a scene where Nunsky comes in, and it's the orderly doing the bed up and kind of taking it down and stuff, and they just get into this conversation about just what do you do afterwards, or this sort of thing, and he just has this really cheesy speech about the pillow and how it goes back to Greek time, and that stuff was pretty bad and cheesy. It just felt like a passage out of a book. It felt like it come from the novel, which this is obviously based on. So I'm wondering how faithful this is to the book. I'm guessing quite faithful, which I'm obviously fine with, and I'm sure the fans are. But obviously there's just certain times when you're adapting something where you should cut certain passages out, or certain scenes that don't quite work when you're trying to make it adapt for the screen, and that seems like one of them. That seems like a passage, a line which could work in the book perfectly fine, but on the screen just comes off as a bit cheesy and a little bit phony. So a couple of weaker scenes. I'll say actually for horror, this is possibly the best episode when it comes to like the mood and the atmosphere, and you get a little bit of a mood with Alonka at the beginning, and like quite a nice sort of jump scare, couple of nice jump scares actually. But she got the files from the office on Julia, and she finds this weird sort of picture in there, like a sort of a picture or a painting, something like that, oil painting maybe, and it's of this symbol, this woman, and she can't figure out what it is, but there's also like some code with it as well on it, and she's trying to figure that out throughout the episode, trying to decode it. So she's talking to like her stepfather about it because he comes for a visit, and you get a bit more with her and Anna slowly starting to bond, because Anna has no one to sort of talk to, has no visitors, because she obviously doesn't have any immediate family around, or maybe there's some people who she's not that close to. So like Alonka sort of introduces her to the I forget the name, I think it's Todd or something, the stepdad. So that's quite a decent scene, and them trying to decode this. But you get a couple of like bits and bobs with the different patients. We find out, for example, that Adish, his mother, can't be there because she's having problem with like immigration and like getting in the country, or sort of sorting out a paper. So like the representative is there with the father, and she's been supportive and sort of talking about how she's going to try and make the case to get her back in. And as I said, it is like Kevin-centric sort of episode. So we see him with his family. We see that his mother is putting quite a lot of pressure on her son, on Kevin's brother. And Kevin, you know, like he's going to be like a runner type thing, and she's saying how he can really be something special, and we sort of get a hint that Kevin, before he became ill, has had that sort of thing going on. But Kevin is saying, then, does he really want this? I thought he wanted to be like, I think it was an actor or some sort of like a stage actor, and so Kevin is like being supportive of his brother, whereas it seems like the mother is a bit too forceful and trying to force that situation. So we just get a little bit more like detail on Kevin in this episode. So like on last time, it's his story this time around, and it's not as good as Anna's, but it's still a decent story. I quite enjoy it. So he plays Dusty, who's like this kind of mystery brooding teenage in high school, and it turns out he's a serial killer. So there's this mystery around him. Like the one who's playing Kevin's girlfriend plays this girl Nancy in school in the story, and they like exchange a look in the hallway, but clearly I think you can tell that Dusty is more like interested and like spying on her, but we're not quite sure of the context. But it's revealed later then he goes out late at night and he kills girls, so that's who he kills. He kills Nancy with a hammer, and it's quite an effective scene. But like he's eavesdropping on Nancy and one of her friends, so he kind of knows that she's going to be home alone that night. And then we see that he's killed a number of girls because they start appearing to him. Once again, I have to say, pretty ropey CGI, but it doesn't matter too much since it's in the story. But yeah, he's been killing quite a few girls, and we see him talking to his mum, and you get the impression that he's doing it for her. So anyway, like the next day in class, he starts talking to this girl Sheila, and Sheila is played by the actress who plays Alonka. So once again, they're kind of getting to do some different things, the cast. and they start chatting and sort of, hitting it off, and they agree to hang out, but Sheila's a friend of Nancy's, and she's noticed she's not come to class that day, so she wants to look into it. She wants to drop by the house, and obviously the way this is going is that Dusty's conscience is getting the best of him, and we see these different women appearing to him, including Nancy. Now, one playful touch which I really like is the way the Midnight Club, the other members, keep chipping in every now and again, like they keep critiquing the story, like they'll say, yeah, you had this in your last story about a serial killer, and he's like, okay, you're right, I'll change that to something else. So it's just like these interventions or digressions is the word I was looking for, than you tend to have with a story. And when you're reading a story out loud, how different people will chip in and kind of critique it or make a comment here and there. But the best part of that is probably then when he's talking to Sheila in class, like one of them, I think it's Adesh, chips in, and he's kind of like, oh, come on, Sheila, don't fall for the brooding time. And that's pretty funny. And Kevin's trying to stand up for his guys. Like, well, the girls quite like him. Some of the guys as well. And that's a pretty funny line. But so what happens is obviously Sheila wants to check in on Nancy, and they drop by her house. Kevin's like, I keep doing that. Dusty's really awkward. And after a while, when she can't find her, that being Sheila can't find Nancy, she calls the cop. And once again, they've worked Heather Lagerkamp into the story again. So I think this is going to become a trend in all the stories, and maybe she's going to have a role, and which I like, because she wasn't in this episode elsewhere, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, she plays the cop doing the questioning, and after a while, Dusty starts getting uneasy and backs out. By the way, it should be Dustin, surely, not Dusty. Come on. I mean, outside of Dusty Rhodes and I guess Dusty Springfield, I mean, who else should be called Dusty? Get with it. But so like he decides to leave, and one touch I really like is then there's a code. They find some sort of, oh no, it's not a code, sorry, it's a symbol. They find the symbol in the kitchen, and so it's similar to what's happening in reality. So the symbol, like Alonka has found, so that's one touch I really liked, is then like Kevin's bringing that into his story, like bringing in the real world, and it sort of shows that he has that stuff on his mind, partly because he probably, cares for Alonka and wants to help her, but just then it's on its mind. And that was a clever little touch, because that's definitely something that happened in real life. And they get a cliffhanger, because later on in the story, Sheila comes to Dusty at night and she says, because of the questions the cop was asking me, I'm pretty convinced this is a missing person case now, and she's worried. So that's kind of like your cliffhanger at the end of the novel, where Sheila wants to pursue it more. And it's a fun scene, because Kevin's saying to them, to be continued, and they're like, oh no, don't do that. And he's saying things like, if you want to hear more, stay alive longer. So it almost becomes a motto. So the spirit this group have, and like those sorts of like banter and the way they share this stuff and play off each other is what makes them very endearing as a group. And they're all quite different as well, which makes the dynamic work even better. But the end of the episode, we get another good like horror sequence where Kevin and Alonka go down to the basement. Well, they're in this lift, and Ilonka notices a secret button that they hadn't noticed before, and she presses it twice. Now, the first time it just takes them down to the basement, and it's like really dark, and Kevin sort of rolls his eyes. He was like, "Come on, let's get out of it." But she presses it again, and it takes them down to a section underneath that, and it's like an even darker section at the bottom of the place. And that's when we get like the cliffhanger of the episode, because she wanders out into the room and she's got like a light on her, and she discovers like this pattern, this symbol in the middle of the floor. And I think it's meant to like mirror the pattern she saw in the I think on the picture probably. And Kevin suddenly is whisked up by the elevator, and so that's a bit of a jump scare. But then we get an even better jump scare, which is like this ghostly figure, this woman, I think, suddenly appearing before Ilonka, and that's the end of the episode. So really good cliffhanger and hook to the end of this one. Solid stuff once again. Couple of scenes I wasn't so keen on, but overall solid stuff. You know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.